Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation. My name is TJ Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, Taj Jackson.
What's up, T?
What is going on, Taj?
Nada mucho.
Okay, I was just messing around because we are vertical today. Yes, it's been a while since we went vertical.
Split screen, yep.
So if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook right now, of course, that's where we go live. You are noticing a little bit different look. All good. You may also be listening to us via the podcast. Yes, we have a Power of Love show podcast presented by the D.D. Jackson Foundation. So if you're a podcast listener and you are watching us on Facebook and YouTube, you can always check out and catch our shows that way. One thing we always do before we start getting too deep into our show is we talk about our disclaimer. My brother and brothers, as in Terrell, when he was doing the show with us, don't like to read out the disclaimer. So it falls on me to do it. So I'm going to do it right now. And that is that we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who've experienced loss in our lives. We've been impacted by it, and we have learned from it. And we like to share our opinions in an attempt to help you get through whatever it is you may be going through. Saying that if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please do not just rely on us. Taj Jackson, before we invite a special cool guest to join us, I love to hear about how your week went. So I'm going to ask you, how was your week?
Oh, I'm happy you asked. Well, there's Mother's Day, obviously, and that's a great day, but it's also a somber day in that way. Real quick, TJ, I just wanted to ask. This is not part of anything, but when did you tell your kids about mom in that way in general, or what age were they? Because I feel like I'm dropping the ball, but at the same time I don't feel like
Taj, you know what? I don't think there was ever I think it was later than what your kids are now. So I personally don't think, and if they're asking,
I remember that at one point they start asking, but
if they ask, then I tell them.
Okay.
But I never just would flat out tell them that their grandmother at this age, once they start to get to 7 and 8 and start understanding things, I would, tell them, or Francis often, I think, told them as well. And, but it is important that they know, of course, at some
obviously
point.
we have pictures around, but we don't have, I don't always say oh, and this is your other grandma, or whatever that way. So, I'm just curious about that. That wasn't what I was going to say about my week, but yeah, Mother's Day is always a tricky day for that reason. But
it's hard.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. And so that's one of the things. But then also I was just I was lucky to be here because the guy just left, but dealt with some plumbing issues.
Oh my goodness!
And all the pipes are where this place is, right here, my little man cave. And so that's why the couch is pushed. If you notice, it's pushed farther away from normally where it is because there's I would say there's a lot of water behind me still.
Really?
Yeah. We had to make do with the set with what it is. But yeah, it's another headache, another reason.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Taj.
That's all right.
It's life. It could be.
I was going to say, remember we were talking, I said it's nothing too traumatically bad that it's it's just another headache.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's no horrible scent or stench.
There upstairs there is,
well, that's not.
But I'll have to turn off the air too eventually. Hold on.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
It's okay. So amateur, but either way, I'm happy to hear it was nothing major because Taj did give me a heads up about 10 minutes ago that he has to tell me something. So that's good that it was just that.
My camera, and I'm going to go turn off the air real quick.
You do your thing. It's cool. I will tell everyone who I kind of wanted to tell you, but
tell me though. I'll wait.
Okay, you can just put it on mute and hear me. But You know how much of a Spurs fan I am. There's only one sports team I really, really love.
I already know where this is going.
And Taj, we only had a 14% chance to get the very first pick. And this year's first pick was a special pick because there's a guy from France. His name is Victor Wembanyama. He's 7'4" with an 8-foot reach. And he is apparently the biggest prospect in NBA history. Some would argue in sports history. That's how good this guy is supposed to be. He's 18 years old, like I said, in France. And whoever got him this year basically has their team set up for the next 10, 15 years because he's that great of a player. And your San Antonio Spurs, I can't keep the smile from turning upside down. And I'm never that person who can get, so I have no ownership in the team. I'm just a crazy fan who loves to see it, and it makes me happy when they're succeeding. So I've been on a nice little high from that. And it's just crazy. I feel like guilty, to be honest, in some ways.
TJ, it's justified because, I mean, let's face it. Spurs did have Tony Parker at one point. So in some way for him, he's on a team with Tony Parker.
We're going to get to the purpose of
come on.
The Power Show. But I have to add this. You mentioned that. And Tony Parker is probably the greatest French player to ever play basketball in the history of the game. And he was also on the Spurs. But what you didn't know, Taj, is Victor Wembanyama's mentor is Tony Parker.
Oh, wow.
And I believe he plays for Tony Parker's team that he owns. So he wanted to come to the Spurs. So it's like a perfect marriage made in heaven. And all of us Spurs fans are the beneficiaries to see.
Well, congratulations. So, I'm not a Spurs fan, but congratulations.
Thank you, Taj. I mean, of course, Mother's Day and all the stuff you said, but that's been a really cool highlight. Yeah. So, Taj, there's one more thing we should discuss before we invite our special guest on to the program with us, and that is tomorrow. We have a special dinner called Dinner for a Cause.
Yes, we do.
Our guest of honor is Amelia Green. She's been a guest of the Power of Love show several times in the past. We've seen and heard about her journey and have watched her go through her journey. And again, I just want to inform everyone that if you want to contribute to Amelia Green and contribute to her and all she's going through and help her get things done that she wants to get done for her family, please donate at ddjf.org. Again, it's www.ddjf.org. You will see when you go to our website, there is a section where you can donate directly to Amelia. And the beautiful thing is, as a donation, it's tax deductible because we are a 501c3. Yep. So that's the first thing. But the second thing I want to say is some of you may have gotten an invitation to come to this private event, a dinner. And if you did, it's strictly because you've been a donor to DDJF before. So yes, you can contribute to us through super chats on YouTube, but to get on that list, you have to make a donation at the website. So if you want to be on that list where we have like little special invites for things like this and events to our donors list and to our friends and family, you got to donate to DDJF at ddjf.org. So you can either get on that list by donate directly to the foundation, or you could donate to Amelia, and that will also put you on the list. So I think I hit all that. Taj, did I miss anything that you wanted to add, or are we good?
No, I mean, it's, Dinner for a Cause is a great cause, and it's for a great person. So I'm very excited.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. I think that's it, Taj. Let's get into our show.
Yes,
let's do it. Over what we do on our intro, but today's guest, we have a special guest. Yes, she's getting 3 specials because she is into something that I'm very much into, and I'm going to ask her a couple questions about that. But our guest today is Sandy Ayre. I should have asked her how to say.
You should have asked.
I know. I guess I was feeling confident, but she'll correct us if needed. Yeah. But Sandy is an occupational therapist and a certified yoga instructor. She holds a certificate in death and Grief Studies from the Center for Loss and Life Transition. Since 2009, she has been offering yoga for grief support groups in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and more recently online due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to these classes, she also works as an occupational therapist in palliative and end-of-life care at a hospital in Edmonton, Canada. Sandy is an animal lover, bookworm, and loves mountain biking. All right, so here today to discuss her work with Yoga for Grief Support. Without much further ado, please welcome to the show, Sandy Ayre. Yes, there she is. Sandy, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Sandy, did I butcher your last name?
No, you nailed it. Very good.
Woo!
Yeah.
So good. I'm on a streak today. So many cool questions I got to ask for you. But Sandy, I'm going to start with this. You're an occupational therapist by trade, but you are also a certified yoga instructor. What initially drew you to take up yoga as a practice, and then furthermore, take the steps to become a certified instructor?
Well, I started yoga, let's see, I guess it would have been around 1998. I was mountain bike racing at the time, and yoga was a good way to stretch out my body and build some strength and things like that. Here in Edmonton, our winters are very long, so it was a good way to kind of pass the time. And then I never really thought about becoming a yoga teacher until I suffered my first kind of massive loss that totally uprooted my life. And my partner at the time collapsed during a mountain bike race and subsequently died 3 days later. So after that, I didn't feel like mountain biking as much as I did before, but I still did yoga. And it still was just a physical practice for me. You know, it felt good in my body to feel something, whether it was stretching or strengthening. But over time, I learned that I was not only benefiting from the physical practice, but benefiting from the relaxation and benefiting from the meditation, benefiting from like kind of that unknown factor. And I say that because I would do yoga and then I would sleep better. But I mean, I couldn't really tell you why. Or I would leave yoga class and have a good cry and then feel better. So there were a couple of experiences within that time and that journey that made me see what a safe place yoga or meditation could be for people. One was I was at a yoga retreat in California, and we were all sitting in meditation, and it was quiet and the room was packed. And someone behind me was sobbing, like completely sobbing. And I felt my, that feeling of like my heart breaking open. And I opened my eyes and I looked around, and no one was getting up to do anything. Like no one was passing her Kleenex. No one was saying like, it's okay, it's okay. And the instructors at the front of the room were also observing, but just really holding a beautiful space for her to experience whatever she was going through. And it was situations like that where I was like, this could be a really, really powerful way for people to experience their life and their loss. So then I thought like, and maybe it's my occupational therapist brain kind of breaking down yoga into a therapeutic activity. But I was like, this could be a really powerful thing specifically for people who are grieving.
Yeah.
Because I also found at times I felt very alone in classes when I was the only one who would like burst into tears or.
So let me say this, and what I wanted to tell you, but I told Sandy before we went live that I had something to tell her, but I was like, and I almost told her, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait until we go live so it could be spontaneous. And what I wanted to tell you, Sandy, was this year, I made a promise to myself. Actually, it was about in October. I made a promise to myself that starting January 1st of 2023 and all year, I would be committed to doing yoga. And I am 5 months in, and I cannot express enough how life-changing and healthy it has been for me.
Amazing.
I went into yoga to get flexibility because I felt I was getting super tight. Putting on a shoe felt like a chore and very difficult. And I was like, I'm in my mid 40s. I don't want to know what 70 is going to be like if I'm struggling at this point. So my intention was for flexibility. And I have to say, the reason why I'm so happy I made this decision is because of the spiritual and mental improvements I've experienced doing yoga. I didn't expect it. I didn't know about it. And it's truly been life-changing and healthy for me. And so when I found out you were joining us, I was very excited because I think that's something that gets lost is the connection that yoga has for healing internally. And with from breathing to being at one, and there's so many great aspects to it that we in today's society, in today's world, in today's pace desperately need. So I'm very happy to have you to talking about it. So maybe more people can start doing some yoga.
Yeah.
My question to you, when setting out to become a yoga instructor, which I have not decided or started to do at all, was your plan always to have it be associated with grief support? And then how did that element of your work come to be? Because I'm enjoying it from an internal aspect, and I know I'm getting some healing done, but to associate it, to become an instructor is a whole nother thing. And I love what you're doing, really associating it with grief more directly. So how did that become, was that always something you wanted to do? And then how did that develop?
Yeah, I think it was something I always wanted to do. I mean, after loss, of course. Before loss, it wasn't even on my radar. But after, I just saw such a need. I saw such a need for a grief-specific yoga class where it was okay if you cried and you could learn about grief. There's a lot of misconceptions in our society about grief and about yoga. So that was my intention to become a yoga teacher and start these classes. But it didn't happen quickly. So I made that decision. And then the teacher training program that I took was a 2-year apprenticeship where you study under someone who lives in my city who had been teaching for 30 plus years. So I really wanted it to be like a lifestyle sort of thing for me. Like I wanted it to become part of my life in a consistent way. And that was the way that I chose to do it, this 2-year apprenticeship. And then I would go to class and I would write down things about the yoga that I found helpful. And I would write down quotes that I heard that were meaningful and relevant. And I took some grief groups as well. And I would, in my mind, like find the cohesion, like, oh, they talk in my grief group about negative thinking or ruminating thoughts. And here in yoga, we're practicing that on our mat. So I would, keep track of all these wisdoms. And over the years, I finally took the leap to start a class. And it was a live class, in-person class here in Edmonton. And I had 3 students. And that was a wonderful way to start because it was a really nice group and we could kind of fumble our way through. Prior to doing that class, I had taught kind of regular yoga, not the grief support yoga. So it was fluid, but it took a long time and it was a scary first step because I take it so seriously. I know that a lot of damage can be done if you're not sensitive to the realities of grief. So.
Yeah. What does grief do to the human body physically? And like how can yoga be a resource or an outlet for someone who's grieving?
Well, as you mentioned, and in my own experience, we start with the physical. Like we go into it for flexibility, and then we realize the depth. Grief has both conscious and unconscious effects on the body, I would say. Perhaps those who have grieved feel the tension, feel the fatigue, the aches and pains. I used to feel like I had been punched in the stomach, or like my legs had been kicked out from beneath me. Like I had these very physical ways to describe how grief felt for me. So yoga can help release some of that just through the gentle movements and the breathing and becoming aware. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I didn't know I was so tight till I started doing yoga, because you don't know until you're putting yourself through those motions. And it's curious to me because sometimes, even now, I think I'm 15 or 16 years post-loss, after that first loss I mentioned, and my body knows around the anniversary time. And you were talking about Mother's Day. Like your body knows sometimes before your mind does that a big day is coming up. So there's that part too, where our body remembers and it still experiences the stress long after the time of the loss.
Georgina has a great question for you. She says, Sandy, how can you convince me about trying yoga? I always think it's too slow for me. I love action and fast workouts. It's hard to stay quiet. What would you say to someone? Because I think a lot of people go through this where they feel yoga's too slow. And so what would you say?
Yeah. I would say then go to a fast class. You know, the cool thing about yoga is there's a way in for everybody. I started doing more of a power yoga style of practice, and that really met me where I was at. It only shifted for me when I didn't have that physical energy to do more. And yoga was there to meet me when I was feeling more slow as well. So there are more kind of powerful or muscular based classes that you could do. And I would start there. Don't try and force something that doesn't feel congruent with what you want. And you never know, it might shift for you to become more comfortable with the quiet.
She says, oh, there's fast yoga. That sounds great to me. Yeah, that's cool. And Jack Love says there's fast-paced yoga and Pilates. Doing planks is no joke. There you go. Okay, and then Tori has a good question real quick. She says, how is yoga different from just exercising or working out when dealing with grief?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, because how is yoga different than just stretching or just holding a plank? And it comes back to yoga being more about the mind than it is about the body. So one of the actual purpose of yoga that was written about years and years and years and years and years ago is that yoga is to stop the churning of thoughts in the mind. And we do that through engaging with the body. So I like to say it's easier to think about one thing than it is to think about everything. So when you're doing yoga, you're focusing on lifting your arm and squeezing this muscle and taking a deep breath. You're focusing on one thing in detail instead of thinking about everything.
So good.
Yeah. And when you're exercising, you know, you might not have that sense of focus. But that's part of yoga, learning to develop that concentration and that focus of mind so that your mind can relax.
Sandy, tell us about your particular program, Yoga for Grief Support. What do your classes offer and what can students expect?
So right now, because of COVID, I'm still online, and I have a kind of like a first level Yoga for Grief Support group, which is called Understanding Your Grief, a yoga experience. And it is slow yoga. It is slow yoga. But within that slowness, I really guide you into feeling your body, the minute sensations, noticing your mind, feeling your feelings, kind of all of it. And yoga is such a holistic practice. There's lots to do, even if you're going slow. So the group is 12 weeks long, and I wanted it to be that long so that people had a chance to take what they were learning at yoga, live their life, come back to yoga, kind of this repeated integration. And each week, so the classes are pre-recorded, and you get an email each week that gives you access. And along with the yoga class, there's grief information, as well as opportunities to discuss with the rest of the group. And then 4 times throughout that, we meet live on Zoom for companionship, questions, yoga, sharing.
So true.
Yeah.
Very cool. April, as yoga helps with my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. And then Sarah says, Sandy, your voice is so soothing, which I imagine you've heard before. Your tone initiates a feeling of safety, which I envision comes through with clients in your grief work.
So I've
cool.
heard
And
that
I
before.
agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, another question for you, Sandy. What would you tell someone, and you kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but I'm going to ask it again anyways. What would you tell someone who may be curious about trying yoga as an outlet for grief, but feeling intimidated by the practice and under the assumption that they're not the yoga type?
Okay, not the yoga type. I have a joke in my household that if you can breathe, you can do yoga. So I'll be like napping and I'll hear, are you doing yoga? But it's true. You don't have to be flexible. And in fact, the less flexible you are, the more benefit you'll get because you're tapping into your muscular system to do the poses. So that's something that I like to tell people. And there's a way to modify every single pose. There's a way to do yoga in chairs. There's a way to do yoga on the bed. Like yoga should be an accessible practice for everybody. So going to a class that's maybe a gentle yoga class or restorative yoga is really nice because you're very supported on like cushions and things like that. So I would say start there. I have a relaxation yoga class on my YouTube page that's very gentle. So if you're concerned about the physicalness, that would be a good place to start. And if you're concerned that it's too slow, choose like a flow yoga class or something like that to give it a try.
Nice. Sandy, I don't have the information on your YouTube yoga page. What is that? Is it Yoga for Grief as well?
It is. There's not much on there, just a couple classes, but yes, Yoga for Grief support on YouTube.
Okay, cool. There you go. So for anyone interested, you can go to Yoga for Grief support on YouTube. Look for it on YouTube. Were you going to say something, Taj?
Yeah, I have my typical questions, obviously. In general, making that leap of faith to start something in that way, because I know you said that you were teaching yoga before, but then incorporating the grief aspect of it, and then having 3 students turn into whatever. Was that? I know you said that it was scary and all that stuff. Like, explain that more in terms of that, because I think some people they get stopped at a certain point and they think they can't do something, and that's usually when they give up on it in that way. So I love hearing stories of people pursuing and because obviously you're here talking to us and in that way, and we're honored to have you, and it's because you pursued. So I just want to know, what was that like?
Yeah, good question. And that's something I haven't really thought about much. I guess, I don't know. I was teaching a prenatal yoga class at the time, and the grief yoga was on the back burner. And out of the blue, I got let go from that prenatal yoga class. She wanted a different person to teach, whose name was also Sandy, as a matter of fact, which is kind of funny. And I thought, like, oh, this is the cosmic leap I need. Like, my schedule's cleared up. My heart is with grief yoga. Why don't I just do it? And I think because I took it so seriously, I put a lot of pressure on myself. But starting small was key because the feedback was good and the participants were just lovely. So that made it easier. And then I grew from word of mouth. I've never wanted it to be huge. I've always wanted to keep it a little bit small, which feels more manageable. But yeah, sometimes I still feel like, I don't know, not should I be doing this, but just the part that scares me the most is how impactful it can be for good and for bad. So for me, I've constantly tried to maintain learning and upgrading, which is mandatory with the certification that I have with my yoga teaching. So yeah, it's a constant evolution. And then going online with COVID too, that was strange because I thought, how could I connect with people online? in the same way. And it's just constant learning, constant evolving. And I think using my yoga skills to be like, no, this feels right. This is okay. This is working. Or conversely, this isn't working.
What would you say to someone though who thinks they're ready to try yoga, but worried about doing it online? Is there anything that you would what are the benefits or the pros in a sense to doing something like this, a program like this online, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, one of the benefits I've seen is that people have time to respond in the discussion boards after reading an article about grief or something like that. And they have the videos for life. So I always tell people after they finish, in a year, go back and do this all again. You will hear different things. You will feel differently. It will be different. So there's that longevity. You know, when I was teaching live and in person, people would come. They might be overwhelmed by being asked even how they were that night. And then the class is over and they're gone. So there's not this time to like reflect and think and type. And, you know, I think that's a real benefit that surprised me.
That's great.
Sandy, another question. This one's Toria says, how many classes would you recommend doing? Do we have to commit regularly, or 5 or 6 classes can do the job and help? What would you suggest? And I think when she says 5 or 6, I think she's saying 5 or 6 total.
Yeah. I think if you can go to 1, 2, 5, or 6 and learn a couple of things that you then use daily, it would help. And when I say a couple of things to use daily, I mean like taking a deep breath or like doing a stretch. Yoga doesn't have to be like a 90-minute endeavor. So if you go with the intention of like learning something that feels really soothing and then continuing on, I think that could work. Nice. But I found when I was teaching in person, if I did a 6-week class, it just didn't feel like enough time for people to learn some of the finer details around deep breathing or like loosening up enough in the chest to take a deep breath. So there's a bit of time investment that would be good if you found the practice hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Caitlin says, please record a guided meditation. Your voice.
Aw, thanks, Caitlin.
Our community is loving your voice.
Thank
Sandy.
you.
Okay. And then Sandy, I have a question for you. How can people get in touch with you to learn more about your work, your virtual classes, yoga for grief? What's the best way for people to learn more about you and what you do, Sandy?
I think my website is the best, which is yogaforgriefsupport.com. And I have a monthly newsletter, which you can sign up for if you go to the website and click on the newsletter tab. So I send it out at the start of each month-ish, and it includes just grief information and yoga information. So that's the best. I am on Instagram too, but I don't post as regularly as I should. But all the links to my classes are there as well. And I have a blog on my website too, which I update too.
Very cool. Okay, so a couple more questions. My first one is, what is your favorite yoga pose? This is me being selfish. I'm just curious. Okay, 2 questions. What is your favorite? And then what do you think is the most effective for someone who just wants to feel better?
Yes. Okay. My favorite yoga pose, I would say laying on your back, your knees are bent, your feet standing on the floor, and then your knees wave side to side. Do you know that one?
It's windshield wipe?
That's what I call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your arms are to the side and it feels nice in the chest and it feels nice in the hips. That's my favorite.
Okay. And then what would you say is the most effective for whatever reason? You can even pick it and say, this is the most effective for this, whether it's for flexibility or whether it's for grief or whether it's for breathing or for stability. Is there a particular pose? And I know, from experience, I think I know that yoga is most effective when there's some type of, there's movement from a pose to a pose. But so I know what I'm asking is probably not something is really proper, but out of curiosity, is there a specific pose that Because one, and I'm going to get a little geeky, but one that we've been doing a lot is cat and cow pose, has been very effective for me and sometimes I get low back pains. But I'm curious to know if there's a specific pose you like for a specific thing.
Yeah. Okay, good question. And I'm glad you gave me your favorite pose because I was going to ask. But I think it's important to say every body is different. Like cat and cow was good for your back. For me, and a pose that I really like for grief is child's pose. Where you're on your knees and you sit back on your heels and then rest your head. And I like that because it's kind of, you're secluded a bit. You can really turn inward. And I just find it soothing and safe. Yeah, you can do it in a chair if you can't bend your knees that far, just sitting in a chair and kind of fold forward, rest your head.
Yeah. I love how you said and safe. That's really cool. I love that. So go ahead. I want to hear what you. I want to hear what you.
Back to people who are starting out with yoga, feeling safe in your yoga class, especially if you're grieving, is key. That is absolute key. Feel safe with the teacher. Feel safe in your body. You cannot grieve and mourn without that sense of safety.
Soleil says, I always feel each yoga session is different as you move forward in your journey, personal growth. And then she also says, pigeon pose is my favorite pose. It digs in the soul music. Soas. And then another question for Georgina. Did you ever think of doing a DVD, Sandy, with your yoga classes?
No, not a DVD. I do have the recordings in my online classes, though. Which is kind of like a DVD, just more of the streaming variety.
And then she has another question. Would this grief yoga also be helpful for children? Are there classes?
I think so. I think it's a great way for kids to get kind of in their bodies and experience their minds and their emotions in a bit of a playful way. I think that could be really good.
Yeah. And then I like what Shauna says. I definitely need something that I'm in a new grief situation. What would you say to someone who is in a new grief situation like Shauna? What, I don't want to say what it would be your pitch, but why would you suggest yoga? Out of all the things they could do, or all the things that others may be saying for them to do, when someone's entering a new grief situation, what makes yoga, in your opinion, the best?
It's holistic. It looks at your body, which is going through its own expression of stress. It tends to the mind. It creates space for emotions. Like you said, too, the spiritual connection, it can help you to kind of tap into that belief system within yourself or explore a new belief system. Yoga, I just think kind of, I want to say does it all, with the caveat that it doesn't do it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can attest to that. There's a lot of growth that I've had in 2023 strictly from committing to yoga. And I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Smokey Robinson several years ago. And after the interview, I asked him, I said, if you could tell your younger self, let's say 30 years ago, one thing, what would be the one advice you'd give him? He said, one advice. And he said, you know what I tell you? I would say, do yoga. That's what he said. And this was many years ago, and that always stuck in my head. And then I was like, you know what, it's time. And like I said, I feel this is something that I will continue to do for life. And I've felt not only the physical benefits, but the internal and spiritual benefits for sure.
Yeah, that's
for
really
sure.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So Sandy, it is that time where we wrap up our program, our show, the Power of Love show. And I want to leave you or give you the opportunity to say whatever it is that is on your mind. It could be on topic, off topic. Taj, anything I'm missing? No, right?
Just feel free. Yeah. The floor is yours.
The floor is yours. What do you want to leave our community, our DDJF community with? And it could be anything you want.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I had something that I was going to say when I had time to think about this, but I'm changing it up because I believe in spontaneity.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you, and just a shout out to everybody who tries something new and is surprised by the benefits. And a little bit of, I don't know, my grief support trainer calls it divine momentum, when you're not quite sure how things are going to turn out or proceed, and yet they do, and you can be pleasantly surprised.
Nice. Very cool.
I love that.
Well, Sandy, Taj, unless I'm missing something or anything else you needed to ask.
No, I mean, I love the whole aspect of this in that way. You even have me contemplating, because I'm like the converted, TJ's, he's been committed and all that stuff. But I didn't really think of, the body aspect of it and grief in that way, because obviously grief and your body, it's very taxing. Grief is in that way. I'm sure with everything that you've stored inside or hold inside, and so yoga looks like the perfect thing to release that. So I'm just very happy that you're here in that way. And yeah, I mean, looking at it differently now. So that's
good.
And Sandy, that's saying a lot.
I was gonna say, TJ knows that's saying a lot.
That's saying a lot. All right. So Sandy, Ayre, thank you so much. Instagram for everyone who may be listening is yoga for grief support. The same, well, it's a little different on Facebook, Yoga for Grief Support. But you can always start at the website, yogaforgriefsupport.com. That is yogaforgriefsupport.com. Please check it out, you guys. Like I said, yoga has been great for me. And I just, on behalf of my brother and the whole foundation, Sandy, want to thank you for contributing to the grief world and doing something you love and something for those who are grieving out there. There's all different types of grief. And, the one thing we always preach on this show is that, there's different things for different people. And we try to give everyone a space and inform our community of different ways you can help and deal with your grief. And you have contributed to that with Yoga for Grief. Yeah. So I really want to thank you. Anything else? I think that's it, Taj, right? We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. I guess that's it, everyone. We will see you guys next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Please be safe, everyone. And thank you for watching. Adios, everyone.